Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Can a rake humanoid attach its energy to someone? In 2012, my then boyfriend lived in Sweden. I live in Canada. He came to visit me, and during one of the evenings I woke up to something strange perched at the foot of the bed. It was a pale, thin humanoid figure. It was completely hairless, and the legs seemed to be bowed in some way. It seemed to walk on all fours despite looking human. I couldn't see much of its face since it was looking away from me. It looked a lot like the creature from the fictional story, the Rake. When I gasped, it hopped off the bed and into the darkness. My partner heard me and woke to ask me what was wrong. I didn't tell him as to not alarm him while trying to rest. In 2014, he was visiting once more and we were once again in bed sleeping. I woke up to hear my boyfriend screaming like I've never heard before. I immediately turned on the light and shook him to try and snap him out of it, but he just screamed and then cried. After 30 or so minutes, he finally was calm enough to explain what happened. Apparently, he woke up to a pale, humanoid figure with a gaping mouth and black, sunken eyes basically on top of him. As he screamed, the figure slowly backed itself into the closet hole staring at him, crawling on all fours. I felt sick. I never ever told him about what I saw a few years prior. There's no way he could have known and described what I saw perfectly like that. Now it's shown up again. My ex messaged me today, we're friends, and told me his now girlfriend has seen the pale man. They were asleep and apparently she woke up to see this thing stalking around the room, and it noticed her frozen in fear, so it crawled up next to her. My ex woke up and tried to console her. She described what she saw. It apparently was a perfect exact match to the thing we both saw. I only ever told him what I saw after his experience, and she has never heard of either of our experiences. Is this just a mass coincidence of hallucinating while waking up? Is it a demon or some sort of haunting? I'm really freaked out. SH.
Possible rake encounter in north central Alabama. Two of my friends, who are a married couple, and I were walking on my family land. It's about 170 acres and heavily wooded with both pines and hardwoods, and heavily trailed. It was dark, but my friends wanted me to take them out walking on the trails. A couple of neighbors' dogs followed us, a coonhound and a Great Pyrenees, and we walked south then east to my camping area. We were hanging out at my camping spot when behind us, further back the trail we had come down, the dogs started acting strange. We were looking back, and they came out of the woods to our left and stood on the trail. The Great Pyrenees started growling real low and looking defensive. The coonhound is a goofball, but he was also acting disturbed about something. They were both looking back down the trail to the west. I immediately got quite a strange and serious feeling. It was a bit ominous. I've learned to trust my gut, which I recommend to anybody in the woods or if around a person or animal that you feel instinctively is threatening. Anyway, I said to my friends, we better get back to the house. To get my point across, I sort of grimly added, now. Well, we were heading west on the trail, and the dogs, if I remember correctly, had vacated the area. While walking, I looked back and saw my one friend, the wife, looking into the woods off the trail and stagger back a few steps. Her husband had walked ahead and I asked her what was wrong. By the way, this is the area where the dogs had previously been growling at. She said to me, I'll tell you when we get back, I don't want to scare him, her husband. He's kind of easily spooked, lol. So, we get back and I asked what she saw. She tells us that she felt she needed to look off the trail, into the trees, and she saw something halfway behind a tree, looking at her. We all had headlamps on. She said it was human-like, pale whitish, with an oval kind of shaped head. Looked like it was crouching, with long limbs. She kept stressing how skinny it was, particularly the limbs. She said it had a surprised look on its face, like it didn't expect us to be there. Myself and friends' relatives use the trails regularly, but not at night. She said that the thing was bobbing back and forth in kind of a creepy way. It moved its head behind the tree and then swaying its head and shoulders back rhythmically to look at her. She said it didn't appear to be aggressive at the moment, but looked scary. I pulled up the famous trail cam pic of the rake, or whatever it is, and she got a shocked look on her face and nodded, yes. However, she made clear that it wasn't exactly the same. The next night, I was on the back porch and heard a freaky, very shrill scream come from the woods. I don't know if the two were related, but I've lived in the country for most of my life, and I've never heard anything like it. This is one of multiple things that have happened around here, but this is the only one that I know of involving this creature. This is in north central Alabama. KB.
Child-sized rake slowly crawled through witness's garden in Berkshire, England. As a teen, I just refused to sleep at normal hours, especially on weekends. Why? Well, that's because the house I lived in and the land the house was on was haunted as crap. Staying up usually meant seeing some freaky activity, and growing up in a small English town in Berkshire, well, that's as exciting as life got. So one night when I was around 14, I was staying up staring out my window when I started seeing glowing blue and purple lights coming from the forest behind my house. We don't have fireflies where I lived. I thought they were cool, so I just continued staring at them, trying to figure out what they were. Now, the way my house was set up, my bedroom window faced the forest and my back garden, and directly next to my room is a side gate that links to the front part of the house. On either side of the gates are motion sensor lights. So the lights in the forest may not have been paranormal, but what happened next most definitely was. The motion at the front of the gate triggers, casting a faint light into my garden. The night grows really silent, no more owls or crickets, and just really eerie. The lights in the forest seem to ebb and then just die out. I listen carefully as I start to hear scuttling on the wood of the gate. It's muffled, so I slightly crack open my window to get a better look and listen. Now that gate is always locked, with a heavy padlock at that. To this day I have asked my dad if he ever left the gate unlocked that night, and he stands by the fact that unless he's gardening the gate stays closed. This was spring, so he might have started seeding, so for my own comfort of mind, I'm gonna assume he left the gate open. Anyways, I hear the gate slowly swing open. The creaks of the wood were so loud against the silent night, so the sound was very distinctive. The motion light right underneath my bedroom window switches on. Honestly, to this day I really can't explain what I saw. It was this off-white veiny kind of skin texture and was about the size of a child. It walked on all fours and looked just sickly. Its hind legs were significantly longer than its front legs, and it looked to have hand claws. I hate having to link back to creepypasta, but it honestly looked like the rake. Now I've gone through the possibilities in my head, trust me. It was too small to be the deer that frequented our garden. Also, it had no remotely deer-like features. A badger or fox with a disease, possible. However, I've never seen badgers or foxes with such long limbs and so disproportionate. Also, this thing was completely hairless and human-like. The worst part about it to me was how it slowly and silently moved up my garden path before disappearing into the woods. The noises of the night started back up after that, but I was so shook that I didn't sleep that entire night. I'm from England, so I haven't heard of any folklore that matches what I saw. I know there were occult practices done in the woods behind my house, but I'm pretty sure it was pagan, hence not inherently bad or demonic. I don't know what I saw. LB.
Possible rake humanoid encounter in eastern Kentucky. I'm not sure that what I saw. Names and the details leading up to this encounter aren't very important, so I'll just set the scene. Two 14-year-old girls on an isolated eastern Kentucky mountaintop a few hours after I flipped the ATV, injuring my friend's leg. I had tried to act quickly, but I was too weak to get the ATV upright by myself. Once the both of us lifted it, we promptly flooded the engine. I helped my friend up, put it in neutral, and decided to push the ATV down the mountain with my friend occasionally tapping the brake. Suddenly, she halts our progress and asks me to jump on the back. In front of us was a monster of a snake. It was the fattest, angriest hog snake I've ever seen, right across our path, blocking us. By this time, it was almost dusk. Because the snake was easily the size of my arm, we decided to just stare it down, waiting on it to crawl on. Finally, I could push again, though I wasn't thrilled about walking next to this monster. I didn't have a long way to go, and we'd be able to coast on down, or maybe my parents would come searching for us. There was still plenty of light, but the sky was pink from sunset. Simultaneously, our heads snapped to look behind us. I'm not entirely sure why we even looked. There wasn't a sound, no twig snap. It had to be something instinctual, because we both looked back at the tree-lined path we'd slowly come through. Every hair that I own raised. My blood ran cold in an instant. I spared one quick glance at my friend, mostly because I hadn't seen it yet. She had. She was completely frozen, and I followed her gaze to about 15 feet behind me. There sat this creature, hunched over. Boneless, yet with some humanoid form. It was skin. Pale white skin. At first, I thought that was all that it was. Then, barely a second after that panicked observation, I noticed its face. Its eyes. They were so deeply set that at first terrified glance, I thought that they were only empty black pits. The setting sun struck them just enough that I could see the refraction. Its nose was flat. This hunched, naked, pale creature was studying me just the same. Its lips were pale, pink and trembling. A horrifying thought informed me that this gaunt creature was famished or starving. As if it heard my inner dialogue, it raised its skin-wrapped, skeletal hand to silence me. Then, it waved its claws one finger at a time. Then, the sweetest sound that I'd ever heard, the ATV started. My friend must have turned away long enough to try it. So, I risked it as well. I leaped onto the back of the ATV, sobbing, and wrapped my arms around my buddy so tightly. When I glanced back, it was gone. Halfway down the mountain, we ran into my parents. It was pitch black by that time. We survived and talked about it later at the hospital. Turns out, she didn't even know how to start the ATV. It wasn't her. It's been a few years since this happened. I haven't been back on the mountain. I'm still friends with her, and we've talked about it a few times. We've theorized various possibilities as to what it could have been, but we can't agree. I've tried to find similar encounters, even in mythology. I'm sure that I've not explained it very well, but I did try my best. Do you have any ideas about what it is? Did it want to hurt or help us out? We both saw it, so at least I know I'm not crazy. I see.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.